3 years of marriage, and my husband spent every single night texting his girl bestie until the early hours of the morning. The screen of his phone would light up until 2 a.m., the notification sounds buzzing nonstop like a rapid heartbeat. When I asked him who it was, he just said, "You're overthinking. I don't even see her as a woman." She came to our house often. The moment she walked through the door, she would drape her arm over his shoulder, tilt her head, and smile at me. "Chloe, you don't mind, right? Yesterday, I came back early from a business trip. When I pushed open the bedroom door, I saw them lying in our bed, wrapped in each other's arms, the blanket pulled up to their chests." She curled the corner of her mouth into a smirk. "Don't get the wrong idea. We just talked too late." He forced himself to look calm. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." I didn't say a word. I picked up the glass of water from the nightstand and splashed it directly onto their faces. "Awake now? Then both of you can get the hell out." Water dripped down their faces, soaking into the white sheets and spreading into a dark, damp stain. Brooke Davis bolted upright. Her wet hair clung to her face. She wiped her eyes, glaring at me. "Chloe, who gave you permission to act so familiar with me?" I slammed the glass back onto the nightstand. The sharp clinking sound of glass hitting wood echoed in the quiet room. Brooke turned her tearful eyes to Ethan Miller. She bit her lower lip, holding back tears until they finally spilled over, dropping onto the sheets one by one. I had to admit, she looked pretty when she cried. I used to think she was pitiful. Now she just made me sick. Ethan sat up too. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, and a few damp strands of hair fell across his forehead. He wasn't as messy as Brooke, but his face was incredibly dark, his jaw clenched tight like a rock. "Chloe Hale, have you lost your mind?" "I've lost my mind?" I looked down at them. I came back early from a business trip, opened my own bedroom door, and found my husband in bed with another woman. How should I react? Should I smile, say sorry for interrupting, and close the door? Brooke's voice drifted over, soft, trembling, and choked with tears. "Chloe, we really didn't do anything. We were just talking late last night, And you what?" I snapped, turning to her. She flinched and shrank back toward Ethan. "Talking until 2 a.m. wasn't enough for you? You had to bring the conversation into my bed." "I didn't mean to." "Then how did you end up here? Did you walk in yourself? Or were you sleepwalking?" Brooke bit her lip, her tears falling even faster. Seeing her cry, Ethan's frown deepened so much it could have crushed a coin. He reached out, patted her shoulder comfortingly, and then glared at me with pure accusation in his eyes. "That's enough. Brooke had too much to drink last night. I didn't feel safe letting her drive back alone, so I told her to sleep in the guest room. She just walked into the wrong room. You're overreacting. Our apartment has 3 bedrooms. The master bedroom is at the very end of the hallway, and the guest room is at the opposite end. Between them are the study and the bathroom. She walked into the wrong room?" I stared at him, suddenly feeling like I was looking at a complete stranger. After 3 years of marriage, I thought I knew him. I knew he was busy with work, I knew he hated nagging, and I knew he had a girl best friend he grew up with. But I didn't know he could lie through his teeth with such confidence. "Ethan, are you seriously telling me she just walked into the wrong room?" His eyes flickered with a brief moment of guilt, but he quickly recovered. "What else could it be? What are you implying?" "I don't know. You tell me." Brooke sobbed, chiming in. "Ethan, forget it. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have come. I'll just leave." She pulled back the blanket to get out of bed. The moment she did, I noticed she was wearing a men's oversized t-shirt. I recognized that shirt. It was the birthday gift I bought for Ethan last month. Now it was on Brooke, the collar loose and sliding off her shoulder, revealing her bare collarbone. My gaze locked onto the shirt. My hands clenched into tight fists. Ethan followed my gaze, and his expression finally turned uneasy. "About that, her clothes got dirty yesterday, so I let her borrow one of mine." "Oh." I nodded slowly. "Her clothes got dirty, so you lent her my birthday gift to you?" "You bought it for me, so it's mine. Who I lend it to is my business." He said this so righteously, tilting his chin up as if he truly believed he had done nothing wrong. I stared at him for 3 seconds, and then I laughed. "Fine. Your business." I turned, walked into the walk-in closet, and opened a drawer. I pulled out a jewelry box. Inside was a Cartier necklace. I had bought it last month, planning to give it to him for our upcoming anniversary. I wouldn't be needing it anymore. I took the necklace, walked over to the window, and pushed it open. The wind from the 14th floor rushed in, making the curtains flutter wildly. "Chloe, what are you doing?" Ethan's voice came from behind, laced with sudden tension. Without looking back, I opened my hand. The silver chain flashed in the sunlight like a falling star before disappearing into the bushes below. "Are you crazy?" Ethan leaped out of bed, running barefoot to the window to look down. That was Cartier. That cost over $7,000. I know. I brushed my hands together and turned to face him. You gave my gift to someone else, and I threw away the necklace you'll never wear. Fair trade. Brooke sat on the bed, tears still wet on her face. Chloe, do you really hate me that much? Why would I hate you? I tilted my head and smiled at her. You're just wearing my husband's clothes and sleeping in my husband's bed. No big deal, right? She choked on her words, her face flushing red and then turning pale. Ethan stood by the window, the sunlight casting his long shadow across the floor. He looked at me with anger, irritation, and a hint of something else I couldn't quite read. Chloe, is all this really necessary? Yes, it is. I grabbed the other pillow from the bed, walked to the door, and took one last look at them. I'm giving you 30 minutes to get out of my apartment. This is my apartment too. His voice turned cold. Actually, it's marital property. If you have an issue with that, you can talk to my lawyer. I walked out of the bedroom and shut the door behind me. When I married Ethan 3 years ago, my mom told me that marriage takes work. She said that when two people live together, there will always be friction and disagreements. She told me to communicate, compromise, and things would get better. I believed her. The first year, he told me Brooke was just a childhood friend and told me not to worry. The second year, he said Brooke had broken up with her boyfriend and was depressed, so he needed to spend more time supporting her. The third year, he claimed Brooke was going through some family issues and needed a place to stay for a few days, so he put her in our guest room. I kept stepping back, kept compromising, and kept telling myself that marriage requires trust and patience. I pulled out my phone and sent a Snapchat message to my assistant, Daisy. Help me find a good divorce lawyer and draft the paperwork. Daisy replied instantly. Wait, are you serious? Dead serious. On it. Honestly, I've been waiting for you to say this. I put my phone in my pocket and walked out of the kitchen with a bottle of water. In the living room, Brooke had already changed into her clothes and was putting on her shoes at the entryway. Seeing me come out, she paused, then straightened up and smiled at me. That smile was completely different from the pitiful face she had shown in the bedroom. Chloe, I'm really sorry about today. It was my fault. Please don't be mad at Ethan. Her voice was still soft, but her eyes held a smug, triumphant gleam. I'm not mad. Now get out. She blinked, clearly caught off guard by my absolute calm. As the door clicked shut, I heard her light, cheerful footsteps heading down the hallway. She was actually humming a song. She was in such a good mood that she was singing. I sat down on the sofa with my water bottle and began planning my next steps. Ethan walked out of the bedroom. He had changed into a pair of dark gray sweatpants and a black t-shirt. His damp hair was messy from being towel-dried. He walked over and sat on the single armchair opposite me. We sat across from each other, separated by the coffee table. Neither of us spoke. On the table was an ashtray containing several cigarette butts from last night. Next to it were 2 wine glasses. One of them had lipstick on the rim. Chloe. He finally spoke, his voice much calmer now. I can explain about today. No need. You. I made myself clear in the bedroom. I interrupted. Get out of my apartment. His brows knit together. This is my home. It's marital property. Talk to my lawyer if you disagree. Are you actually serious about this? Do I look like I'm joking? He stared at me for a long time, probably shocked that I was speaking to him this way. For 3 years, I had been the easygoing, understanding, and quiet wife. When he said Brooke was just a friend, I said okay. When he said Brooke needed to stay with us, I said fine. When he texted her late at night, the notifications buzzing until 2 a.m., I simply rolled over and pretended not to hear. I had shrunk myself down to almost nothing just to avoid annoying him. But now I was exhausted. I was done shrinking. Have you been wanting a divorce for a long time? He suddenly asked. I thought about it and nodded. Pretty much. Since when? About a year ago. His face finally cracked. A year ago? You've wanted a divorce since last year? Yes. Then why didn't you say anything? I did. Did you ever listen? He opened his mouth but couldn't find any words. A year ago, I told you Brooke was coming over too often. You told me I was making a big deal out of nothing. 6 months ago, I brought it up again. You called me petty and said she was like family to you, telling me to stop being so jealous. Last month, I told you for the 3rd time. You slammed the door, walked out, and stayed at Brooke's place the entire night. Ethan, I told you 3 times. You never took me seriously, not even once. His throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, his lips trembling before he managed to mutter, I thought you were just venting. Right. You thought I was just venting. I stood up and set my water bottle on the table. Just like you thought Brooke walked into the wrong room, thought her wearing your shirt was an accident, and thought her posting photos on Instagram with her arm around your shoulder was just sibling loved. You think a lot of things. Now I'm giving you a chance to think about what's actually real. I turned to walk toward the study. His voice chased after me. Where are you going? To work. Right now. Yes, right now. Unlike you, I don't have a company that runs itself while I text my girl bestie until 2 a.m. The next morning, I woke up at 7 a.m. After washing up and changing, I walked out of the bedroom. Ethan was already sitting at the dining table. On the table was a box of fresh bagels, cream cheese, and 2 cups of hot coffee. Seeing me walk out, he pointed to the seat opposite him. Let's eat breakfast. I glanced at him, said nothing, and sat down. The aroma of freshly toasted bagels filled the room. Did you make this? I asked. I bought them. From that bakery down the street. Didn't you say you love their bagels? I took a bite. It was indeed from my favorite local spot. Thanks. His eyes lit up slightly, clearly surprised by my polite response. Sure. We finished our breakfast in silence. I put down my napkin, wiped my hands, and stood up. He stopped me. What do you want for dinner tonight? I can. No need. Eat by yourself. I grabbed my bag, slipped on my heels, and walked out the door. After a long day of work, I returned home to find Ethan gone. The living room was empty, the blinds were drawn, and the space was dim. I turned on the lights, put on my slippers, and walked into the master bedroom. The sheets had been replaced with fresh ones. The ruined set from yesterday was gone. On the nightstand sat a glass of warm water with a sticky note pressed underneath. Left you some warm water. I have a business dinner tonight, don't wait up. I stared at the note for a second, crumpled it into a ball, and tossed it into the trash can. At 9 p.m., my phone rang. It was Ethan. Chloe, I might be home late tonight. The client wants to. Got it. I hung up. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It wasn't a call from Ethan, but a message from a mutual friend. Chloe, did you and Ethan get into a fight? I just saw him having dinner with Brooke at a restaurant. They seemed really close. I tapped on the attached photo and zoomed in. Ethan was sitting in a cozy booth, and Brooke was sitting directly opposite him under the dim, romantic lighting. I smiled. So this was his business dinner. A candlelit dinner with Brooke. I put my phone down and went back to editing my business proposal. At 1 a.m., the front door unlocked. I heard Ethan's heavy footsteps stumbling down the hallway before stopping outside my study. He knocked gently. Chloe, are you still awake? Yes. I brought some takeout. Do you want some? No. Silence stretched outside the door for a few seconds. Are you mad again? I released my mouse, walked to the door, and pulled it open. He was leaning against the doorframe, smelling of alcohol, his face slightly flushed. Ethan, who did you have dinner with tonight? His expression froze for a fraction of a second. A client. Which client? You don't know them. Was it Brooke? His pupils contracted, but he quickly recovered his composure. How did you know? Someone saw you. He remained silent for a few seconds, then let out a heavy sigh. Fine, I had dinner with Brooke. But she insisted on buying me a meal to apologize to you. She was too scared to face you directly, so she wanted to talk to me first. So she invited you and you went. She asked you to take her home, and you did. She asked to sleep in your bed, and you let her. I told you that was an accident. Enough. I raised my hand, cutting him off. Ethan, save your explanations. Who you eat with, drink with, or sleep with has absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. His face drained of color. What do you mean it has nothing to do with you? You're my wife. Not for much longer. The hallway fell dead silent. Ethan stood before me, his expression morphing from confusion to shock, and finally to anger. What is that supposed to mean? Exactly what it sounds like. You want a divorce? The silence in the hallway was heavier than the smell of stale scotch hanging off Ethan's coat. He didn't move. His hand remained wrapped around the doorframe, knuckles white. His posture rigid as if waiting for me to laugh and tell him it was all a test. A divorce? His laugh came out dry, short, almost incredulous. Chloe, you're talking about ending 3 years of marriage over a misunderstanding. A single damn mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Ethan. It was a lifestyle. I took a step back into my study, my voice measured and entirely devoid of heat.
You've been married to.
The idea of having a wife at home and a mistress in your pocket. I'm just removing the home base. She is not my mistress, he roared, his composure finally snapping. The sound echoed off the high ceilings of the apartment. I grew up with her. Her father died when she was 12. I promised her family I'd look after her. Then go look after her full-time, I said softly. You don't need a marriage certificate to be her white knight. I closed the study door. I heard him hit the wooden panel with the palm of his hand, hard enough to rattle the frame, but I didn't flinch. I sat back down at my desk, pulled up my email, and opened the message from Daisy. Attached was a contact card for Sarah Vance, a partner at Vance and Sterling, one of the most ruthless family law firms in the city. Daisy. She's expensive, but she eats men like Ethan for breakfast. Consultation is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Don't back down, boss. I replied with a brief, thank you, and closed my laptop. Outside, the apartment finally went quiet. I didn't sleep in the master bedroom. That night, I locked the study door, pulled the throw blanket off the sofa, and slept on the daybed. For the first time in 3 years, the buzzing of a phone didn't wake me at 2 a.m. At 8:30 a.m. the next morning, I walked down to the basement parking garage. Ethan's Audi was gone. By 8:55 a.m., I was sitting in a corner office on the 32nd floor of a glass tower. Downtown, Sarah Vance was in her late 40s, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, her silver-streaked hair pulled into a razor-sharp bun. She didn't offer me tea or sympathy. She opened a fresh yellow notepad, capped her Montblanc pen, and looked me dead in the eye. Your assistant gave me the summary, Vance said, her voice crisp and cool. Infidelity, emotional neglect, disrespect in the marital home. But in court, feelings don't yield dividends. Financials do. Tell me about the apartment. It was purchased 2 years ago, I said, placing a folder on her desk. Purchase price was $1.4 million. Down payment was $400,000. I contributed $250,000 from my savings before the marriage. He contributed $150,000. Both our names are on the deed. Vance nodded, writing fast. Good. And his business. He owns 40% of Miller and Associates, a logistics consultancy. The company was founded during our 2nd year of marriage. Which means, Vance said, a faint smile touching her lips, the valuation. Growth of his equity during the marriage is considered marital property. We get a forensic accountant. There's more, I added, leaning forward. Ethan has been spending heavily over the last year. Cash withdrawals, hotel charges, expensive meals. He always claimed they were business expenses. I want his personal and corporate accounts audited. Vance stopped writing and raised an eyebrow. You suspect he's been funneling marital assets into this woman? I don't just suspect it, I replied coldly. I know it, and I want every dollar accounted for. Consider it done, Mrs. Miller. Hale. I corrected her firmly. Chloe Hale. Vance's smile widened, sharp and approving. Miss Hale, let's get to work. By midweek, the legal machinery was turning silently in the background. I had moved my essential clothes and documents into a long-stay boutique hotel near my office, leaving Ethan alone in the empty, quiet apartment. He had tried calling 42 times. He sent text messages ranging from furious threats, if you do this, you won't get a cent of my company, to desperate. Please, please, Chloe, let's just sit down and talk like adults. I ignored every single one. On Thursday afternoon, I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with my executive team when Daisy knocked on the glass door of the conference room. Her face was tight. Chloe, you have a visitor in the lobby, she whispered, stepping inside. I told you I'm not taking personal calls. It's not Ethan, Daisy said, her eyes flashing with disdain. It's the girl, Bestie. A hush fell over the room as my team looked between Daisy and me. I kept my face utterly unreadable. Give me 2 minutes, I told my team. I smoothed down the skirt of my ivory suit, adjusted my watch, and walked out toward the reception area. Brooke was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, holding a large white box, tied with a silk ribbon and a massive bouquet of pink peonies. She wore an innocent, beige cashmere sweater dress that slipped slightly off her shoulder. A carefully curated look of fragile helplessness. When she saw me approaching, her face transformed instantly into a picture of gentle remorse. Chloe, she said, her voice soft enough for the receptionist and 3 passing directors to hear. I'm so sorry to drop in on you at work, but you wouldn't take Ethan's calls, and I couldn't sleep knowing I caused so much pain between you two. She held out the flowers and the box. I brought your favorite pastries from the bakery downtown and these peonies. Can we please talk? I just want to clear the air. Ethan is miserable without You. It was a performance. A deliberate, calculated show designed to make her look like the sweet, peacemaking angel while framing me as the cold, heartless wife who made scenes at work. I didn't reach for the flowers. I didn't reach for the box. I stood 3 feet away from her, hands folded neatly in front of me. Brooke, I said, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet, marble-floored reception area. How much did Ethan spend on your apartment rent last month? Brooke froze. The gentle, tearful smile faltered. What? I said, how much did my husband transfer to your checking account on the 15th of last month? I asked, taking a slow step toward her. Was it $4,500? Or was that just for the designer bag he bought you during your depressive episode in Chicago? Several staff members stopped in their tracks. The receptionist's hands hovered over her keyboard. Brooke's cheeks flushed a blotchy, dark red. Chloe, what are you talking about? That was a loan. You walk into my home, sleep in my bed, wear the birthday gifts I bought for my husband, and now you come to my office with $30 flowers paid for with his credit card to play the martyr. I didn't. Brooke stammered, looking around frantically as she realized the audience wasn't looking at her with sympathy, but with disgust. Security, I called out calmly, without turning my head. 2 tall security guards stepped out from the main entrance elevators. Please escort this woman off the premises, I said smoothly, and place her on the building's permanent trespass list. Chloe, you can't do this. Brooke snapped, her sweet, breathy voice suddenly turning sharp and shrill as the guards approached her. Ethan will be furious with you. Ethan doesn't work here, I said, turning my back on her. And soon he won't be living with me either. Have a nice day, Brooke. As I walked back down the hallway toward the conference room, I heard her raised, angry voice echoing behind me, stripped of all its delicate vulnerability. The sweet little girl next door was finally showing her teeth. The real blow landed 3 days later. Sarah Vance called me into her office on Monday morning. On her desk was a thick stack of financial records highlighted in yellow, pink, and green. Sitting next to her was a thin, sharp-looking man with wire-rimmed glasses, Arthur Pendleton, the forensic accountant. Miss Hale, Arthur said, pushing a summary sheet toward me. Your husband is remarkably lazy when it comes to covering his financial tracks. I scanned the numbers. My blood ran cold, not out of sadness, but out of sheer indignation. Over the past 2 years, Ethan had spent over $180,000 on Brooke Davis. It wasn't just occasional dinners or late-night drinks. He had co-signed the lease on her luxury high-rise apartment. He had paid her credit card bills 3 separate times. He had written off her weekend trips with him to Miami and Aspen as corporate consultation fees through his firm, Miller and Associates. This constitutes a massive dissipation of marital assets, Sarah Vance explained, tapping her pen on the summary. Under state law, when a spouse uses joint funds or marital earnings to support an extramarital affair, the court can force that spouse to reimburse the marital estate in full during asset division. What about his company? I asked. That's the best part, Vance said, her eyes glinting. Because he funneled company money to cover her personal expenses, he opened up Miller and Associates to tax fraud and corporate malfeasance. His business partner, Marcus Vance, no relation to me, thankfully, has no idea Ethan was using the company expense account as his personal mistress fund. I sat back in the leather chair, letting the information sink in. Ethan thought he was playing a game where he got to keep the dutiful wife at home while indulging his ego with the needy best friend. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. What do we do now? I asked. Now, Sarah Vance said, sliding a thick blue folder toward me. We serve him. Not at home. Not through the mail. Where? At his company's annual charity gala tomorrow night. Vance smiled tightly. The one where he's receiving the Entrepreneur of the Year award from the local Chamber of Commerce. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis was filled with crystal chandeliers, jazz music, and 300 of the city's business elite. Ethan stood near the stage, wearing a sharp black tuxedo, a glass of champagne in his hand. Standing right beside him, wearing a backless emerald green silk dress, was Brooke. She looked radiant, clinging to his arm, looking up at him with wide, admiring eyes as Ethan laughed and chatted with potential investors. He was parading her around under the guise of his operations assistant, a title he had hastily manufactured for her 2 days prior to justify her presence. Ethan believed I was cowering in a hotel room, weeping over our broken marriage. He thought he had won. At 8:30 p.m., the heavy mahogany doors at the back of the ballroom opened. I walked in. I was wearing a floor-length, backless black velvet gown that fitted every curve. Like armor. My hair was styled in dark, elegant waves, and around my neck sat a stunning diamond choker, one I had bought for myself 3 days ago with my own money. Beside me was Marcus Vance, Ethan's senior business partner and 50% shareholder in Miller and Associates. As we walked into the ballroom side by side, heads began to turn. Ethan's eyes caught mine from across the room. The smug, confident smile on his face froze instantly. His grip on his champagne glass tightened so hard I thought the crystal would shatter. Brooke saw me too. Her hand slipped off Ethan's arm, her mouth opening slightly. In shock. "Chloe?" Ethan muttered, stumbling slightly as he took a step toward me.
"What
are you doing here? Who told you?" "I invited her, Ethan," Marcus said smoothly, taking a sip from his wine glass. As we approached their table, "Chloe is a major stakeholder in your equity. After all, it only seemed right she attend our biggest night of the year." "Marcus, this is a private event," Ethan began, his face pale, sweat beginning to bead at his hairline. "Ethan, darling," I interrupted, my voice silky and loud enough to draw the attention of the surrounding tables. "You forgot something at home this morning." I reached into my clutch bag and pulled out a formal, wax-sealed legal envelope. I didn't slap him. I didn't raise my voice. I simply placed it gently into the front pocket of his tuxedo jacket, patting his chest lightly. "You've been officially served," I whispered, leaning in close so only he and Brooke could hear. "Divorce petition, request for full asset freeze, and a formal demand for an audit of Miller and Associates for corporate embezzlement." Ethan's face went completely gray. You did what?" "And as for you, Brooke," I turned to face her. She backed away half a step, her eyes wide with terror as she saw the wealthy board members around us whispering and staring. "I hope that green dress was worth $180,000, I said softly. "Because according to the court order, you'll be subpoenaed next week to return every cent of marital property Ethan spent on you." "Chloe, stop," Ethan hissed, reaching for my wrist. "Are you insane? You're ruining my life." "No, Ethan," I said, stepping back out of his reach and looking him up and down with absolute cold indifference. "I'm just taking mine back." The days following the gala were a nightmare of Ethan's own making. The story broke within corporate circles almost overnight. Marcus Vance, furious about Ethan's misuse of company funds to finance Brooke's lifestyle, initiated an emergency board meeting. By Friday, Ethan's voting rights in Miller and Associates were suspended pending a forensic tax audit. Without his company expense account, Ethan's personal credit cards were frozen by the court order Sarah Vance had secured. The cracks in Ethan and Brooke's pure, innocent bond appeared almost instantly. On Sunday evening, I received a phone call from an unknown number. I answered it calmly. "Chloe, please." Ethan's voice sounded broken, raspy, heavy with alcohol. "Please talk to me." I sat in the armchair of my new, sunlit apartment, overlooking the river. "What do you want, Ethan?" "She's gone," he sobbed into the phone. It was the first time I had ever heard him cry, not the quiet tears of frustration, but the raw, pathetic weeping of a man who had lost everything. Brooke left. I remained silent, sipping my tea. When the bank froze the joint credit account I opened for her, when she realized she was going to be sued by your lawyers, she packed her things and moved out of her apartment. Ethan stammered. "She called me a failure, Chloe. She said I was an idiot for letting you take everything. She said, she never even liked me that way. She was just using me because I bought her things." "I know," I said quietly. "Everyone knew, Ethan, except you." "I was so stupid," he wailed, his voice cracking. "She manipulated me. She played on my sympathy. I swear to God, Chloe, I never loved her. I was just arrogant. I thought I could have everything. Please come home. We can fix this. I'll sell the company equity. I'll give you whatever you want. Just don't leave me." I looked out the window at the city lights reflecting off the river below. 3 years ago, I would have cried hearing him like this. I would have blamed myself, wondered what I did wrong, and tried to fix a broken man. Now, listening to his desperate sobs, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no pain. Just an overwhelming sense of relief that I was no longer standing in his storm. "Ethan," I said softly. Yes? Yes, baby, I'm here, he gasped, hope rising in his voice. The settlement papers will be delivered to your lawyer tomorrow morning.
Sign
them, and we never have to speak again. Chloe, no. Please. I ended the call and blocked his number forever. 6 months later, the final divorce decree sat on the glass coffee table in my new penthouse apartment. The court had ruled entirely in my favor. Due to the blatant dissipation of marital assets, I was awarded 80% of the proceeds from the sale of our $1.4 million apartment, along with a lump sum settlement of $450,000 paid out from Ethan's remaining liquidated shares of Miller and Associates. Ethan had been forced to step down as CEO of his company, reduced to a junior consultant role at a rival firm with half his old salary, struggling to pay off the legal debts he had accumulated. Brooke had disappeared from the city entirely after being forced by her own legal team to settle out of court, returning the car Ethan had bought her and liquidating her luxury wardrobe to cover her legal fees. Her social media accounts, once full of smug, passive-aggressive posts about her boy bestie, were permanently deleted. The front door of my apartment opened, and Daisy walked in, holding 2 iced lattes and a thick stack of new project files. Morning, boss, she smiled, placing a latte on my desk. The board just approved the expansion plan for your new agency. We officially launch next month. Thank you, Daisy, I said, taking a sip of the cool coffee. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The morning sun washed over the city, warm, bright, and completely clear. My phone sat silently on the marble counter behind me. No late night notification buzzes. No gaslighting excuses. No lies disguised as friendship. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill my lungs, and smiled at the endless blue sky ahead.